There are people who disappear into the quiet places of the world, not to escape life, but to finally feel life touching them again. They walk into forests as if entering a sanctuary built for their tired spirit, letting the wind speak the words no one ever asked them to say. They sit beside rivers because flowing water reminds them that even emotions are meant to move. And sometimes, when the world becomes too loud to breathe in, these people look for a place where the noise ends, and the healing begins, gently, silently, without asking for anything in return. The psychology behind people who heal in nature is rooted in a quiet truth: these are individuals whose internal world has carried more weight than they ever admitted out loud. Psychologists often describe them as highly attuned, emotionally sensitive, and deeply introspective, the kind of people who absorb stress the way leaves absorb rain. They're not weak, they're not fragile. They're simply built with a nervous system that feels life in high definition. And when the world becomes too sharp, too demanding, too chaotic, their mind instinctively searches for a place without edges. Nature becomes that place. For them, stepping into open fields or shaded forests is not leisure, it is regulation, a way to bring their emotional world back into balance. Their nervous system relaxes with every branch that sways, every cloud that drifts, every bird that sings without urgency. In psychology, this subtle shift is often recognized as a form of self-directed emotional grounding, a natural attempt to anchor themselves when the inside feels unsteady. But the real story goes deeper. Because these are the same people who learned, very early in life, that silence can be safer than noise and that solitude isn't loneliness when the world inside you is louder than the world outside. People who heal in nature often grew up carrying emotional weight they didn't know how to name at the time. Some learned to self-soothe because comfort wasn't always available. Some learned to regulate their feelings alone because the people around them were too consumed with their own storms. And for many, emotional neglect wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, subtle, almost invisible. They didn't always have someone who noticed the trembling in their voice, or the way their eyes looked tired even when they smiled, or how much they wished someone would simply ask, "How are you, really?" So they grew up becoming the kind of people who learned to hold their sadness gently and silently. And when the world asks them to move faster, speak louder, be tougher, be unaffected, they begin to suffocate. Nature becomes the place where they can finally exhale. It's not that they love forests or oceans in the way people love hobbies, it's that these landscapes feel like home to parts of them that never had a home. People who heal in nature live with a quiet contradiction: they crave peace more than anything, yet they carry a heart that feels everything deeply. This paradox shapes their inner world. They long for stillness, yet their mind rarely rests. They appear calm, yet inside them are entire oceans of emotions that they rarely share. They want connection, yet they retreat often, not because they don't care, but because the world's noise overwhelms their inner balance. And so they walk into forests. They sit by lakes, they let the sky hold what other people never saw. It's not avoidance, it's recovery, it's how they return to themselves. Most people experience nature as scenery, these individuals experience it as a sensation. The cold air on their skin, the softness of soil under their shoes. The whisper of wind brushing past their cheek. The quiet hum of distant leaves. These sensations ground them, they pull the mind out of spirals, out of fears, out of memories, out of pressure. Psychologists often describe this as a natural form of sensory integration, where the brain uses external calm to soothe internal storms. It's not learned, it's instinctive. When they walk through nature, they're not sightseeing, they're recalibrating. Their heartbeat slows, their breathing deepens, their thoughts soften, their emotional wounds loosen their grip. It is one of the few places where they don't have to pretend to be okay. People who heal in nature are often the same ones who learned early to carry emotions others dismissed. The child who noticed tension in the room before anyone else did. The friend who absorbed everyone's problems without ever sharing their own. The quiet one who overthought every word because they understood too well how words can wound. The sensitive one who felt criticized even when someone didn't mean it that way. The observer who could see emotions in others but rarely felt seen themselves. Sensitivity was never their weakness, it was their unspoken burden. And because no one ever taught them how to unload it, they searched for a place where their emotions felt safe enough to breathe. Nature became that place. The forest doesn't judge their silence, the ocean doesn't question their sadness, the mountains don't demand that they just get over it. In nature, they are allowed to exist exactly as they are, no adjustments, no masks, no emotional editing. These individuals often appear solitary. People misinterpret this as avoidance, withdrawal, or disinterest, but the truth is far more delicate. They don't isolate themselves to escape others, they isolate themselves to return to themselves. Their solitude is medicinal. It gives them the space to unclench the emotions they've been holding. Process the pain they never voiced. Release the thoughts that have been spiraling, and remind themselves who they are underneath the stress. In psychology, this pattern is sometimes connected to introspective emotional processing, a natural desire to understand one's inner world so deeply that external noise becomes a barrier, but nature doesn't interfere, it invites, it welcomes, it listens, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, it heals. People who heal in nature are often mislabeled as too emotional, too quiet, or too sensitive. Yet their sensitivity is precisely what allows them to feel beauty with such intensity. It's what allows them to connect with emotions others struggle to recognize. Their depth isn't accidental, it's crafted through years of observing, absorbing, and surviving emotions that others didn't notice. Nature doesn't overwhelm them because nature feels like them, raw, honest, gentle, powerful, unfiltered. And that is why they heal there. The psychology behind people who heal in nature is rooted in a truth many overlook. These individuals feel emotions not as passing states, but as entire atmospheres inside their mind. Their inner world is richer, deeper, and heavier than what they show on the outside. And because they grow up constantly navigating complex emotional landscapes, they develop a unique relationship with the natural world, a relationship built on safety, resonance, and emotional honesty. To psychologists, they often resemble individuals with high emotional attunement, people whose nervous system reacts strongly to stress, subtle tones, changes in energy, and unspoken tension. But to themselves, they simply feel like people who get overwhelmed easily, who need silence more than others, and who can't breathe properly in chaotic environments. Nature becomes their emotional stabilizer, not because they are weak, but because the world has been too loud for too long. For many of them, life has always been a tug-of-war between what they felt and what they were told to feel. They were often the child who sensed something was wrong long before anyone confirmed it. They could feel the quiet disappointments, the tension behind closed doors, the exhaustion hiding underneath a forced smile. And when no one explained those feelings, their mind created its own meaning. If I'm feeling this much, something must be wrong with me. Why do I sense pain that others don't talk about? Why do I feel everything too deeply? This internal conflict between sensitivity and dismissal, between perception and silence, creates a lifelong pattern. Psychologists refer to it as a form of emotional dissonance, where a person's inner emotional experience clashes with the emotional reality they are forced to accept. Nature becomes the first place where that dissonance disappears, because nothing in nature tells them, "You're overthinking. You're too sensitive. You're imagining it. You should be stronger." Nature accepts their emotional truth without contradiction. People who heal in nature often carry attachment styles shaped by experiences that made emotions feel unpredictable. Not necessarily traumatic, but inconsistent. They may have grown up in environments where love was real but emotional stability was not. Where affection was given, but understanding was rare. Where presence existed, but emotional warmth fluctuated, so they learned to find safety not in people but in spaces. And nature, stable, rhythmic, predictable, became the one place where their nervous system didn't brace for disappointment. Trees do not change their tone, rivers don't withdraw affection, the wind doesn't stop listening. This consistent calm is a form of emotional safety they may have never fully experienced with people. People who heal in nature often turn to it during the quiet breaking points of their life, when their mind has been carrying too many thoughts, when the expectations of others feel suffocating, when their own self-worth feels shaky, when they're tired of being the strong one, when they're overwhelmed by their own empathy, when life feels too constructed, too artificial, too fast. Nature is the only place that doesn't require them to choose a version of themselves. It is the only place where they don't have to impress, perform, or pretend. Out there, they can finally say, I'm tired, I'm hurting, I need time, I need space, I need to feel like myself again. Nature hears those words even when they can't say them out loud. People often mistake their love for solitude as withdrawal. But their solitude is not an attempt to run from the world, it is an attempt to understand it, to understand themselves, to understand the emotions that refuse to go silent. When psychologists describe introspective individuals, they often talk about those who don't simply feel emotions, they analyze them, sit with them, question them, and trace them back to their roots. That level of internal processing requires stillness, and nature provides that stillness. It becomes the canvas upon which they unravel their internal knots, slowly, quietly, gently. They don't push their emotions away, they unpack them. They don't suppress their feelings, they examine them. They don't run from their shadows, they walk with them until they understand where they came from. Healing, for them, is not a sudden revelation, it's a gradual unfolding, and nature gives them the emotional space to unfold without judgment. People who heal in nature have a unique gift, they can hear what others overlook. The soft rustling of leaves, the quiet hum of insects, the subtle shift of light through clouds, the distant song of a bird. These sounds are not just background noise, they are reminders of a world that moves gently, patiently, rhythmically. Their sensitivity allows them to feel the emotional tone of nature the way others feel the emotional tone of a conversation, and that emotional tone tells them, you are allowed to rest here, you are allowed to slow down, you are allowed to feel everything, you are allowed to heal. Nature does not raise its voice to be heard, yet they hear it more clearly than anything else. People who heal in nature often carry wounds that didn't bleed but changed them, the wound of being unheard, the wound of being misunderstood, the wound of giving too much, the wound of loving without receiving. When they step into nature, something inside them begins to come back to life, something that went quiet in order to survive. Nature restores the softness they buried, the curiosity they muted, the tenderness they hid, and slowly, they begin remembering who they were before the world told them who to be. Nature is full of contradictions, it is soft and powerful, quiet and alive, fragile and unbreakable. These contradictions mirror the emotional paradox within them. And that mirroring is healing. It reminds them that their sensitivity is not fragility. That their softness is not weakness. That their emotional depth is not a burden. People who heal in nature live with a kind of emotional complexity that is both beautiful and burdensome. They walk through the world with a heart that remembers too much, a mind that wanders too deeply, and a soul that never gets entirely used to noise. They are sensitive, not in the fragile sense, but in the perceptive sense, able to feel the emotional temperature of a room the way others feel the physical one. And when life pushes too hard, when emotions stack without release, when expectations become too sharp, their internal world retreats to the one place that never asks them to change nature. In everyday life, these individuals are always translating themselves, softening their feelings, adjusting their tone, hiding their stress, reshaping their truth so it doesn't burden those around them. They are fluent in emotional adaptation, but nature doesn't need translations, it meets them in their raw form. A forest doesn't ask them why they are quiet, a river doesn't ask them to smile, a mountain doesn't say, you're overreacting. Nature allows them to feel without performing, without explaining, without being misunderstood. This lack of emotional negotiation is healing. It releases the inner tension they've held for years, the tension of constantly existing between what they feel and what the world expects them to show. People who heal in nature often carry roles: the listener, the calm one, the problem solver, the dependable one, the emotionally stable one. Roles that look admirable from the outside, roles that drain them quietly on the inside. They rarely fall apart in front of others because they grew up believing emotional breakdowns must happen alone, and so their emotions accumulate inside them in layers: stress that turns into fatigue, fatigue that turns into numbness, numbness that turns into quiet sadness. Nature becomes the only place where they can finally let the pressure dissolve. The trees watch them without expecting strength, the wind wraps around them without asking them to be okay, the earth beneath them holds them without conditions, and in that unconditional space, they begin to unravel the parts of themselves they've kept tightly wound. One of the most profound traits of people who heal in nature is their ability to reflect deeply. They don't just feel emotions, they trace them back to where they came from. They ask themselves, why do people exhaust me even when I care about them? This introspection isn't self-doubt, it's emotional intelligence in its rawest form, but reflection requires silence, and silence is rare in the human world. Work, responsibility, expectations, noise, everything competes with their inner voice. Only in nature do they finally hear themselves clearly. And when they do, they begin to understand the emotions that have been shaping them quietly from within. This is why their healing in nature is not accidental, it is psychologically aligned with how their mind processes life. People who heal in nature don't just rest there, they transform there. When they watch waves crash and retreat, they see their own emotional patterns, how feelings come intensely, and fade gently, and return in cycles. When they watch sunlight filter through branches, they understand resilience, how even broken spaces allow light to enter. When they observe seasons shifting, they recognize their own phases, times of growth, times of stillness, times of shedding, times of becoming. Psychologists often describe this as symbolic self-recognition, when an external environment mirrors internal emotions so accurately that it becomes a catalyst for healing. Many people who heal in nature have an attachment history that taught them emotions must be managed alone. They may have experienced childhood environments where emotional expression was misunderstood or discouraged. So they learned, I can handle things on my own, my emotions are my responsibility. People who heal in nature are the ones who notice the way leaves tremble before the wind fully touches them, the way water sounds different depending on its depth. These observations are not distractions. They are emotional expressions. To psychologists, this sensitivity is linked to high openness and emotional complexity, traits often found in intuitive, reflective, and deeply empathetic individuals. This sensitivity to subtle beauty is also why they get overwhelmed in chaotic environments. Their nervous system absorbs too much, their heart interprets too much, their mind processes too much. Nature filters out the noise so they can finally feel the beauty without feeling the chaos. Life often hardens sensitive people, not immediately, not intentionally, but gradually. The disappointment of being misunderstood, the exhaustion of being emotionally available, the pain of carrying others' burdens, the quiet heartbreak of not being truly seen. Nature returns them to a version of themselves they abandoned to survive. Healing, for people who find peace in nature, is not a destination, it's a return to themselves, the part of their soul that learned to whisper because the world was too loud to let them speak. Throughout their life, they were often surrounded by noise disguised as advice, support, or expectation. People told them, stop overthinking, you're too emotional, you need to be stronger, but nature never spoke those words. When they sit beneath a quiet sky, their mind is finally allowed to hear its own truth. They begin to see the patterns of their life with clarity. People who heal in nature are often individuals who accumulate emotions quietly. They don't explode, they absorb. Nature doesn't rush their emotions, it lets them rise, and settle, and rise again, until they finally loosen their grip. This emotional digestion is one of the deepest forms of healing, and it happens only in spaces where the soul can breathe.